I know you are out there. You're listening. You're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I can't see the future. I'm not here to tell you how this is going to end. I'm here to tell you how this is going to begin. I'm going to start this broadcast, and when I do, I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. A world without controls and boundaries. A world where anything is possible.
Today, we filed a motion asking Judge Williams Locke to issue an order providing for the protection of the plaintiffs and their counsel and families, as well as all potential witnesses in the DNC fraud lawsuit. In support of this motion, we have cited the following events: the untimely death of our process server, Sean Lucas, the unsolved murder of DNC employee Seth Rich. We believe Mr. Rich might have been a potential witness in this case. We've also cited the recent untimely death of federal prosecutor Barrington Wiseman in South Florida, recent bizarre and disturbing conduct, including threats, that has been directed at plaintiffs, their counsel, and employees.
The man you just heard speak is Jared Beck of the Beck & Lee Law Firm. In June of 2016, Beck & Lee, on behalf of Bernie Sanders supporters, filed a class action lawsuit against the DNC and then DNC chairwoman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. The lawsuit claimed that the DNC favored Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders in the 2016 presidential primary. In the clip you just heard, Beck made a plea to the court for an order of protection, citing the untimely death of process server Sean Lucas, the unsolved murder of DNC staffer Seth Rich, the untimely death of federal prosecutor Barrington Wiseman, and threats made against people related to the DNC fraud case. Before we take a look at those threats, let's take a look at the claims filed against the DNC and Debbie Wasserman Schultz in the DNC fraud lawsuit.
The first is a claim for fraud against the DNC and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. The second claim is for negligent misrepresentation, which is essentially substantially the same as the first claim. 3 alleges that the Democratic National Committee and Debbie Wasserman Schultz engaged in deceptive conduct prohibited by the statute by falsely stating that the DNC was being neutral and even-handed in the primary process when in fact it was not. Count 4 is a claim for unjust enrichment against the DNC, which seeks a return of all donations made to the DNC by members of the proposed class. Count 5 is a breach of fiduciary duty claim on behalf of a proposed class of members of the Democratic Party, and the claim here is essentially that the Democratic Party breached its Democratic National Committee breached its fiduciary duty of care to members of the party by failing to run the Democratic primary in a fair and even manner. Count 6 is a claim for negligence, and this is a claim also against the DNC on behalf of its donors relating to the failure to use reasonable care by the DNC in safeguarding the personal information of the donor.
It started to become clear in October of 2015 that the DNC and Debbie Wasserman Schultz were in the tank for Hillary Clinton when they did everything they possibly could to protect Hillary Clinton from having to debate potential primary opponents.
We're following a very surprising controversy that has sprung up just ahead of tomorrow night's Democratic presidential debate here at the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas. Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, a vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, says she was disinvited from this debate after calling for more debates among the Democratic candidates. Congresswoman Gabbard is joining us now live from Honolulu. Congresswoman, thanks very much for joining us. What happened? Because you were supposed to be here as a leader of the DNC, and all of a sudden you're still in Hawaii.
Thanks, Wolf. Aloha. It's good to talk with you and your viewers today. As you know, I've been pretty vocal about calling out for more debates. I've been calling for more debates to give the American people the opportunity to hear from these presidential candidates, to listen to what they've got to say, to hold them accountable for their views and their positions. Because that differentiated from the decision that the chairwoman made from the DNC, I was told that I was no longer welcome to come to the debate.
So Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the chair of the DNC, what you're saying is she ordered one of her aides to call up your staffer and say, you know what, don't come. Is that what happened?
There was a conversation between her chief and my chief. Debbie's chief had called mine and basically spoke about an interview that I had talking about the need and the call that the American people are having for more debates, for democracy, for increasing the engagement that we need in our society as we look to see who will lead our country into the future. The prevailing message of that was, because I continued to call for more debates, that I should not go to the debate there in Las Vegas.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the DNC would draw further criticism for scheduling presidential primary debates up against nationally televised football games. And then, in December of 2015, Schultz and the DNC would get the leverage they needed to deny Bernie Sanders' campaign access to their own voter data information.
The Sanders campaign says that party leaders are trying to undermine his run for the White House, and in a 12-page document, they laid out its case. Earlier this week, party officials say there was a database breach in a system which holds records about potential voters. During that breach, the DNC says staffers from the Sanders campaign inappropriately accessed information from Hillary Clinton's data. The Sanders campaign fired its top data staffer, but in response to the breach, the party suspended Sanders' campaign from the database. The lawsuit says without access to that database, the campaign will lose about $600,000 in donations a day. It blames the party for the situation, saying it is the DNC and not the campaign that is in breach of those contractual duties. The campaign should not be punished for the carelessness of the DNC and its third-party vendor.
Individual leaders of the DNC can support Hillary Clinton in any way they want, but they are not going to sabotage our campaign, one of the strongest grassroots campaigns in modern history.
The DNC has not sent out a specific response to the lawsuit, but Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz said earlier today they need to know whether the Sanders campaign used any of Clinton's data. She says, when we receive this report from the Sanders campaign, we will make a determination on re-enabling the campaign's access to the system.
Following public backlash, Wasserman Schultz and the DNC would restore the Sanders campaign access to their own voter data information. And then, in February of 2016, Wasserman Schultz would draw further criticism when she made this disturbing comment regarding grassroots campaigns and superdelegates.
Unpledged delegates exist really to make sure that party leaders and elected officials don't have to be in a position where they are running against grassroots activists. We are, as a Democratic Party, really highlight and emphasize inclusiveness and diversity at our convention, and so we want to give every opportunity to grassroots activists and diverse, committed Democrats to be able to participate, attend, and be a delegate at the convention. And so we separate out those unpledged delegates to make sure that there isn't competition between them.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz essentially admitted that the DNC uses superdelegates to choose their presidential candidates, and that grassroots candidates can compete against one another but have no real shot of becoming the party's nominee. In an incredible display of arrogance, the DNC would use this very argument in the DNC Fraud Lawsuit. The document pictured is a court transcript from the DNC Fraud Lawsuit, argued in front of the court on April 25th, 2017. Transcript of motion hearing had before the Honorable William J. Zolk, United States District Judge. And the fact that money has, I know that my distinguished colleague on the other side has several times said that, well, money makes this different, and it really doesn't in this context. You know, again, if you had a charity where somebody said, hey, I'm going to take this money and use it for a specific purpose, and they pocketed it and stole the money, of course that's different. But here, where you have a party that's saying, we're gonna, choose our standard bearer, and we're gonna follow these general rules of the road, which we are voluntarily deciding, we could have voluntarily decided that, look, we're gonna go into back rooms like they used to and smoke cigars and pick the candidate that way. That's not the way it was done. But they could have, and that would have been their right. And it would drag the court well into party politics, internal politics, to answer those questions. The DNC's attorney in the DNC fraud case argued in court that the DNC has every right to choose their candidate, and they can disregard the votes of the masses. That even if they fixed the election so that Hillary Clinton would defeat Bernie Sanders, they have every right to do so. Even if Bernie Sanders supporters poured in millions of their hard-earned money to Bernie Sanders under the pretense that it was a fair election. But does the DNC's argument hold? Do they have the right to fix their own elections? Let's take a look at the DNC's bylaws that both campaigns agree to. The Charter and Bylaws of the Democratic Party of the United States. This, according to Article 5, Section 4, the national chairperson shall serve full-time and shall receive such compensation as may be determined by agreement between the chairperson and Democratic National Committee. In the conduct and management of affairs and procedures of the Democratic National Committee, particularly as they apply to the preparation and conduct of the presidential nomination process, the chairperson shall exercise impartiality and even-handedness as between the presidential candidates and campaigns. The chairperson shall be responsible for ensuring that the national officers and the staff of the Democratic National Committee maintain impartiality and even-handedness during the Democratic Party presidential nominating process. According to the DNC's own bylaws, the DNC and DNC chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz were supposed to show impartiality and even-handedness during the 2016 presidential primary. Not toward just the Hillary Clinton campaign, but toward the Bernie Sanders campaign as well. To further investigate if that occurred, let's look at a series of events that started on July 10th, 2016, with the murder of DNC staffer Seth Rich.
A popular D.C. neighborhood is reeling after its first murder of the year, and the victim is a 27-year-old who worked for the Democratic National Committee. Our Scott Taylor joins us from the Bloomingdale neighborhood where this all happened. Scott?
Seth Rich lives just a couple blocks up the road. He was walking here in his home, his neighborhood, when police found him right there in the intersection on the ground. And police say he was shot twice in the back.
During the opening clip of this video, Jared Beck, the lead attorney in the DNC fraud lawsuit, brought up the death of Seth Rich. He implied that Seth Rich may have been murdered due to his connections to the DNC. That Seth Rich was someone who may have been able to testify against the DNC in the DNC fraud lawsuit. Well, shortly after the death of Rich, Julian Assange, the founder and CEO of WikiLeaks, would also invoke Rich in an interview he did on Dutch television.
Whistleblowers go to significant efforts to get us material and often very significant risks. As a 27-year-old, I worked for the DNC, who was shot in the back, murdered just 2 weeks ago for unknown reasons as he was walking down the street in Washington. So
that was just a robbery, I believe, wasn't it?
No, there's no finding. So
what are you suggesting? What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that our sources take risks.
For more information on the death of Seth Rich, watch my video titled The Unsolved Murder of Seth Rich. 12 days after Rich's murder, WikiLeaks would release the DNC leaks, which would lead to massive fallout. The DNC leaks included 20,000 emails and 8,000 internal memos and documents, which showed that the DNC favored Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders during the 2016 presidential primary.
In one email, a top DNC staffer wonders about Sanders. Does he believe in a God? He has skated on saying he has a Jewish heritage. I think I read he is an atheist. This could make several points difference. Sanders called for Wasserman Schultz to step down.
And step down she would.
On the eve of the Democratic convention, tonight a bombshell. Party chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz resigning after WikiLeaks released thousands of internal Democratic National Committee emails suggesting the party favored Clinton over Bernie Sanders.
In what can be characterized as an embarrassing admission of guilt, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the head of the DNC, was forced to resign on the eve of the Democratic National Convention. Shortly after, in an event that seemed unrelated, Sean Lucas, a process server hired by the Beck law firm, would be found dead by his girlfriend on August 2nd, 2016.
Another man connected to the DNC is found dead less than a month after the murder of DNC staffer Seth Conrad Rich. One America's very own Rachel Roboto tells us more about the mysterious death of Sean Lucas and his involvement with the party's email scandal.
It was a celebratory day for Sean Lucas when he entered the DNC building last month and told a committee official, "You've been served." Lucas worked as a process server for the class action DNC lawsuit. The lawsuit was filed against both the committee and former DNC chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz for allegedly committing acts of fraud after leaked emails revealed the DNC showed favoritism towards Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders. After serving the papers, Lucas told an independent filmmaker who captured the whole thing on video that although Schultz refused to meet with him, democracy was served.
Yeah, they wouldn't give us any of the head honchos, which I kind of had a feeling wasn't going to happen, but we did make contact with somebody from the Democratic National Committee's office, and they've been served. Democracy has prevailed today.
But in a bizarre twist of events, on August 2nd, less than 1 month after serving the subpoena, Lucas was reported dead. According to police records, Lucas's girlfriend found him lying on the floor unresponsive when she returned home that evening and immediately called 911. Paramedics said there was no sign of life by the time they arrived on the scene. Police are not releasing the cause of death at this time and are not commenting on speculation that Lucas was murdered. His unusual and sudden death is fueling speculation about the recent death of Seth Conrad Rich.
Ellie Beck, the wife of Jared Beck, under her Twitter handle, The Cranky Lawyer, confirmed that Sean Lucas was going to testify in the DNC fraud lawsuit. On May 28th, she wrote, "Correct. Sean Lucas was to be our witness in court in the DNC fraud lawsuit hearing. An autopsy would rule that Sean Lucas died of a drug overdose. I have been unsuccessful in attempting to find anything from friends or family of Lucas as to the history of his drug use. We do know from the wife of Jared Beck that Lucas was going to testify in the DNC fraud suit." Then, in May of 2017, another body would wash up when Barrington Wiseman would be found dead on a Florida beach. Barrington was a federal prosecutor in Florida.
Mysterious death in Miami, a federal prosecutor's body found on Hollywood Beach, raising a lot of questions. ABC's Lindsay Davis is here with the latest in the case. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning, Robin. Barrington Wisenant Jr. was working his way up in the legal field. Just a few months ago, he accepted a job working in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami in its major crimes unit. And now his own death is being investigated as a crime.
This morning, police are investigating the death of Miami federal prosecutor and father of three, Barrington Wisenant Jr. The 37-year-old's body was found in the water close to shore on Hollywood Beach in Florida by a civilian walking on the beach early Wednesday morning. Police say he suffered a head wound, possibly caused by a gunshot or another type of trauma. They're currently investigating his death as a crime. Witnesses say he was found fully dressed and that personal effects were found on his body. Wisenant had recently joined the U.S. Attorney's Office in January, working in the Major Crimes Unit. According to court records, he'd been handling several visa and passport fraud cases while also teaching a paralegal program at the University of Miami.
Information coming out on Barrington's death has been limited. Police ruled his death blunt force trauma to the skull, although they have not made it clear whether he was shot or hit in the head with a hard object. It is clear that he was investigating fraud in the state of Florida prior to his death. Any connection to the DNC is not yet known. I've read about speculation, but I don't like to report on speculation. On June 13th, Jared Beck and his law firm, along with a number of plaintiffs, asked a federal judge for an order of protection against the DNC, that they wanted to be guarded along with their families by federal marshals. Within those court filings, Beck would cite the deaths of Barrington, Sean Lucas, and Seth Rich. He would also cite a number of new allegations made against the DNC of criminal activity and intimidation tactics. Let's take a look. This from the official court filings. Plaintiff's motion for order of protection and request for hearing. 1. The parties previously advised this court about a telephone call that took place on June 1st, 2017 between a voice-masked caller and the Office of Plaintiff's Counsel Beck and Lee trial lawyers. Defendants themselves stated that they were very concerned and reported the matter to the Capitol Police. June 2nd, 2017. In the evening of June 2nd, 2017, the same Beck and Lee employee with whom the voice mask caller spoke received a visit to her mother's home by an unknown woman. When the employee's mother answered the door, the unknown woman specifically asked for the employee by name. The employee was not home, and the unknown woman left a Florida Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee vote-by-mail application. The employee is not registered, no party affiliation, not a Democrat. The unknown woman did not visit any other house on the block, although she had a stack of forms provided to the employee's mother. The employee's mother came out of the house to see where the woman went. The woman had already driven off in a gray car with tinted windows. There was possibly another person in the car. On June 2nd, 2017, undersigned counsel attorney Cullen O'Brien received 3 telephone calls from a no caller ID number. In the first telephone call at 1:46 p.m., the caller identified himself as Chris and inquired if Attorney O'Brien was working on the DNC fraud lawsuit. Attorney O'Brien asked the caller to put on any communication in writing. The caller hung up. Attorney O'Brien did not recognize the voice of the caller. Approximately 20 minutes later, Attorney O'Brien received another call from a no caller ID number. The caller identified himself as Chris, asked for O'Brien, and sounded like the person that had just called. In the second telephone call, Attorney O'Brien asked the caller to put any communications he had in writing, and in response, the caller started ranting, "This is bigger than you and your family and your law partners," and in the rant referenced the news of the recent death of the Assistant U.S. Attorney Barrington Wisenan. Attorney O'Brien injected and again asked the caller to put any communications he had in writing, of which the caller responded to various other rants, including, "I'll play the law firms off of each other." Attorney O'Brien then told the caller he was terminating the telephone call, and Attorney O'Brien hung up on the caller. At approximately 9:49 p.m., Attorney O'Brien received another call from a no caller ID number. Attorney O'Brien did not answer the call. The caller left a nearly 4-minute message. Between 8:10 p.m. and 11:44 p.m. on June 2nd, 2017, Attorney O'Brien received 8 emails which appear to be from the caller and which plaintiffs submit under seal. Attorney O'Brien has since received 3 additional emails forwards of emails which appear to be from the caller and which plaintiffs submit under seal. However, Attorney O'Brien and his family have not been physically visited by anyone. June 3rd, 2017. Named plaintiff Angela Monson returned to her home to find her door open and a non-working laptop computer. Someone had broken into her home and appeared to have tampered with her computer. In summary, an attorney in the DNC Fraud Lawsuit reports that he has been harassed via phone call and email, that within that harassment, the name of a recently murdered Florida prosecutor has been invoked, that a plaintiff in the case has had a random person show up at her mother's house, drop off information related to the Democratic Party, even though the family has no affiliation with the party. No other house in the area received any information related to the Democratic Party. A second plaintiff reports that a person broke into her home and tampered with her laptop. In addition to this, Seth Rich, a 27-year-old staffer for the DNC, was found murdered with 2 gunshot wounds to the back. Sean Lucas, a process server hired by the Beck law firm, the server that served the case to the DNC, who was going to testify in the case, was found dead of a drug overdose.
Today, we filed a motion asking Judge Williams Locke to issue an order providing for the protection of the plaintiffs and their counsel and families, as well as all potential witnesses in the DNC fraud lawsuit. In support of this motion, we have cited the following events: the untimely death of our process server, Sean Lucas, the unsolved murder of DNC employee Seth Rich. We believe Mr. Rich might have been a potential witness in this case. We've also cited the recent untimely death of federal prosecutor Barrington Wiseman in South Florida, recent bizarre and disturbing conduct, including threats, that has been directed at plaintiffs, their counsel, and employees.
Subscribe, and for exclusive access, visit Tom Anderson at www.patreon.com.